right, guys, welcome back to another edition of Texans Unfiltered. Forgive me, busy week, so I haven't been on every day this morning or every day this week. Um, had some stuff going on, but with work, but here now. Obviously, a big weekend to recap. Lots of things happened. Lots of things have happened this week. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's living their life, enjoying it. Hope you're not getting too involved in the Texans quarterback debate as that continues to go on. And as of today, we still have 49 days until the draft. So if you're on Twitter or you're on anything else, you still have 49 days to go through Bryce Young debates, which is fantastic. So with that being said, though, as we get into our stream as per usual, let's unfuck ourselves before we get started. So today, Thursday, March 9th, you can't keep blaming others for how your life is. Boom, mic drop. All right. It's true, though. It's true. How's everybody doing this morning? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Vincent. Good morning, Oscar. I hope everybody's having a wonderful week. Lots of things going on in the NFL. Lots of things going on in the Texans world. I thought we'd start with combine winners, as it only makes sense for me to start with combine winners given the guy that I was pulling for and think the Texans should take it to being ultimately the combine winner. So combine winners this year. Look, this draft class is a unique draft class. There's some real athletes in this draft class, and while you can't put a ton of stock into, what they do on the combine, the film's always going to outweigh anything that they do at the combine. It's still relatively important because you're able to pull different things away from the combine that you can't pull from the film. And yeah, I think Anthony Richardson, he had the best combine that any quarterback in the NFL has ever had. It's really not debatable. He beat Cam Newton, who held like the highest RAS score. Relative athletic score, I believe, is what it stands for. Anthony Richardson had he tested off the boards in every category. And it's funny because when everybody saw that, they're like, vertical leap. Whoa, that's awesome. I see quarterbacks all the time jump over people. He really needs that. It's such an embarrassing thing for people to say, but really it's just, the vertical leap is just to show you like the athletic ability of the quarterback. Is he going to use his vertical leaping skills? Probably not, right? Maybe at times, but it's not going to be anything that he falls back on. It's not going to be a big part of his game. The vertical leap, the broad jump, those two things, not really a big to do when it comes to really any NFL player, but it does show you where the athlete is and what they're capable of doing. And I think you can pull some from that and just add it to, other things that you've already seen from a person on film. His 40 time, a 4.43, the fastest quarterback to run a 4.43. He just tested off the charts. Throwing, he looked good, missed a couple balls. I think it's expected with what we've seen on film. He's not a perfect passer. That's really all there is to it. And he has some things he has to work on from a mechanic standpoint. His footwork needs to get a little bit better. He needs to be more consistent with his footwork. But Anthony Richardson slaughtered the combine, walked away. Obviously, he was the talk of the town. Multiple people have said that he killed his interview with NFL teams. Lance Zierlein came out this week and said, that that's not what he heard. But, I think it's interesting when we hear about these things, and it all goes back to what we talked about when, I started the stream again, was just the fact that, agents have their agendas. Agents leak things to specific, media members to push an agenda. And, I would say that Anthony Richardson's agent is extremely good at what he does. And he has been feeding a ton of information out to the media to really build hype around Anthony Richardson. Whether it's right or wrong, that's debatable at this point. We don't know which quarterback is going to be the better quarterback in this draft class. We have a good understanding of what each one brings. We understand that Anthony Richardson is behind some quarterbacks, but also he's ahead of some quarterbacks from an athletic perspective. Bryce Young is the processor. Come in, calm, cool demeanor, leader of men. He really, he is everything that people say he is. And his size is a knock, his arm is a knock, but outside of that, Bryce Young is, if the Texans take Bryce Young, the Texans are going to be in good hands. It's just the way it works. Bryce Young is going to be a good NFL quarterback if he can stay healthy. Nothing tells us that he can't. There's no data to say 5'10", 190 can't. We'll have to just wait and see. I think everybody understands where I'm at with Bryce Young. It's just too much of a risk. But outside of that, it really doesn't matter. If Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans identify him as the quarterback that they want to take at 2, then who are we to argue with people who do that for a living? But yeah, Anthony Richardson had an amazing combine. Nolan Smith had an amazing combine. Bijan Robinson obviously had an amazing combine. Kalia Cansey from Pittsburgh had an amazing combine. There were a lot of guys that looked really good this last weekend, and it is what it is. Like I said, there's film, and then there's the combine. You take the film. You're always going to trust the film on when it comes to evaluations over anything that you see at the combine. But you're able to add certain things to your film when you walk away from the combine with some of the things that we saw this weekend. And I think ultimately that's what NFL teams are looking at, right? Did it move anybody up draft boards? I don't know. It all depends on how people in GMs in the NFL take the combine, right? Like if you're looking for a quarterback like Anthony Richardson, before you really didn't have measurables to be able to say, hey, this guy from an athletic perspective is this and has the ability to do this, and when you're, projecting where he could be in the NFL and what quarterback you've seen that reminds you of him, maybe a little bit. But I don't think that the combine, I don't think any quarterback went from 4 to 1. I don't think any quarterback went from 3 to 1. I think maybe you could have had a quarterback that went from 2 to 1, right? Like I think CJ Stroud made a case from a throwing perspective to be the number 1 quarterback taken in the draft. He threw extremely well. His touch, the way he's able to layer the ball, he has nice arm strength. It's not like off the charts. It's not Anthony Richardson, but it's better than Bryce Young. So I would say that, there's a good chance for some of the NFL boards across the league. Maybe CJ Stroud jumped Bryce Young. Depending on what the offense is looking for, what you're needing from a quarterback. But CJ Stroud definitely made a case this last weekend that he could be the number 1 pick. I think there's a lot of hype around Anthony Richardson and being the number 1 pick. I can't see Anthony Richardson going number 1 overall. There's just too many concerns, right? It's very similar to Bryce Young in the sense of like, they're just different concerns. 54% accuracy, or completion percentage in college. Never going to be something that NFL GMs are like, oh, 54%, that's great. Like we can work with that. I think it's more or less projecting where that 54% can go and what you can do. And I think CJ Stroud really looked good, but like when you're talking about like the risk, Anthony Richardson's a risk, Bryce Young is a risk. You're going to have to decide which risk is less risky or which risk can pay off more. And I think ultimately that's what it comes down to when these GMs are looking at the quarterback position. Are you looking for a high upside guy who maybe could be on the level of, I don't want to say Mahomes because that's another level, but the Allens, the Herberts, the Jacksons, the Burrows, things of that nature? Or are you looking for, a safe prospect that can come in day 1 and really take your team and lead it? Like, don't be mistaken by anything I've said about Bryce Young. Day 1, Bryce Young can start. Day 1, your team is better. Bryce Young is going to come in and he's going to be able to help take your team, especially this Texans team where they're at, to where they need to go. Will he be able to do it long term? See, that's ultimately where it comes down to. We don't know. We could say he's going to get hurt. We could say he's not going to get hurt. There's an argument for both sides. We don't know. Or are you looking for a guy who has a high upside, but also a low floor? And that's where Bryce Young doesn't have a low floor from a quarterback position. Bryce Young has, an average to an above average floor from the quarterback position. And Sometimes that's what GMs are looking for, especially in this offense, right? When you look at this offense and what we've seen from San Francisco in the past, you're throwing in space. It's a rhythm offense, timing, all that is taken into consideration. 4 or 5 out, yard outs. You're looking at, crossers. You're really looking to put the ball in the playmaker's hands and create yak. You're not looking to throw downfield consistently. There's going to be some out throws. That'll be like, and I've said that before, like my biggest concern with Bryce is the outs and like the crossing tight windows. But until we see that he can't do it, there's no reason to think that he can. Or I mean, if we haven't seen him do it, then we can't doubt that he can't. But we can question it. And I think ultimately that's what it comes down to. I am team Anthony Richardson. I think this team has been very safe since its existence. They've never been a big risk taker in anything they've done. It doesn't matter. If you just look back at the history of this team, safe is where they go. And I think they're in a position to not have to play safe. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to with Anthony Richardson for me is I don't want to play it safe. I'm tired of playing it safe. Swing for the fences. If you miss, you miss. You move on to the next one. All right, so combine winners, good combine, fun to watch. It's nice to be able to watch these guys run too, and some of the drills. The tight ends looked really good. Darnell Washington had an amazing combine, and I think it's just fun to be able to watch these athletes be athletes in their natural environment. You don't really get an opportunity to see that in any other sport that we pay attention to. You don't see it really in the NBA. You don't see it in baseball. So to see these athletes who are the best athletes in the world go out there and perform, it's an amazing thing to see. So, all right, that's the combine. Jimmy Garoppolo news. There's a heavy push within the Houston Texans, within NRG to sign Jimmy Garoppolo to a 1-year deal. I don't know how to feel about that. I mean, it all depends. I think when these types of things break, we don't know the plan. And I think so a lot of times people are like, well, that just means that, we're wasting a pick at 2, or that means we're not taking a quarterback at 2, or there's so many different angles that it can go. Really, we don't know what the plan is if Jimmy G is signed. Do I think that there's a chance they sign Jimmy Garoppolo? Yeah, I do. I mean, he's been tied to the Texans since Nick Caserio's been here. It's been foreshadowed for 2.5 years. There's no reason to think that he's not a target in free agency for Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans. I mean, he was already foreshadowed to be here, and then you add the fact that D'Amico Ryans comes from San Francisco. I mean, it's like 2 + 2 does equal 4. Is it a bad thing? I don't know. I mean, Jimmy G, if you're looking at a top 18 quarterback, Jimmy G would be that. Is he better than Davis Mills? I think he's more consistent. No, actually, you can't even say that. If it was me, I'd rather run Davis Mills out there than sign Jimmy Garoppolo. Because I don't really know what problem you're solving with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's not like Jimmy Garoppolo is going to come here and want to be a mentor. He wasn't that in San Francisco. So ultimately, like, what is the purpose of bringing Jimmy Garoppolo here? Is it competition? If that's the case, then why are you spending, you're going to have to spend 20 million, 23 million for a 1-year deal, 100% guaranteed for Jimmy Garoppolo? What are you looking to accomplish with that signing? He's always hurt, so you're wasting at least 7 to 8 million, right? He's going to miss games. So it really doesn't make a lot of sense, but it kind of is what it is at this point. I was talking to somebody last night on Twitter, and he's super pissed and irritated with some of the things that he's hearing about the Texans. Ultimately, like, I look at the last 2 years as a cleanup year. That's all they've done. Nick Caserio came in and inherited the worst situation in NFL history. Had to clean up the cap, had no draft capital, really had to get a fresh start to be able to get to where they're at now. Now that's the case. They just hired the top head coaching candidate in the offseason. I'm not going to freak out over Jimmy G. There's just really no reason to. We'll see. If it's to compete with Mills and the rookie, I guess. If your rookie can't beat Jimmy Garoppolo, though, like think about that. If your rookie that you draft at 2, if they draft a quarterback at 2, if he can't beat out Jimmy Garoppolo in training camp, did you draft the right guy? Probably not, right? I mean, if you can't beat out Jimmy G, I find it hard to believe that you're going to have a pretty high ceiling. Now, if it's to watch, like to just sit there and bring the guy in and let him watch for a year, pull the Pat Mahomes, okay, cool. But like Bryce Young doesn't need that. CJ Stroud really doesn't need that either. He could be a better processor, don't get me wrong. And that's where he's going to need to, be better. But I don't really see a reason to bring Jimmy Garoppolo here to be a mentor. He's not a mentor type. What can he mentor? How to find porn stars and date them? Like Jimmy has never shown the willingness to be a mentor. And if you like looked at the way he acted in the in the playoffs on the sideline with the Niners, like I don't know, to me that just doesn't seem like a smart move. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. I wouldn't sign Jimmy Garoppolo at that point. If you're going to take a quarterback at 2, you have EJ Perry, who you just signed yesterday. Nick Casario had him work out 3 times last year. You have Davis Mills on, who they said his name. Bobby Slowick said his name, Candyman. And if you draft a quarterback, bring it in, make it a competition. Best quarterback starts week 1. Go from there. No reason to spend $20 million or even $15 million, whatever it may be, on Jimmy Garoppolo. It really doesn't make any sense. So while I see the reporting, I don't know if it really honestly makes a ton of sense. I'd rather a Teddy Bridgewater be a mentor. I don't want Jimmy Garoppolo. So thank you for talking me through, letting me talk through that, because now at this point, it's it really doesn't make sense for Jimmy Garoppolo to be here. All right, and then now we have Lamar Jackson, who had the exclusive franchise tag placed on him Tuesday. And for those that don't know, the exclusive franchise tag is different than the franchise tag. So the exclusive franchise tag allows Lamar Jackson to go out to 31 other NFL teams, have an offer presented to him, and if the offer is accepted by Lamar Jackson, he then goes back to Baltimore and says, here's the offer that the Jets are offering me. I'm willing to accept this. Can you match? No. Lamar Jackson goes to the Jets. 2 first-round picks go to Baltimore. And, Lamar Jackson's a Jet. So that's the way the exclusive franchise tag works. At first, I was like, man, if we could, we should. I don't think any of these quarterbacks in the draft this year are going to be better than Lamar Jackson, whether it's 4 or 5 years. Lamar Jackson's only 26. Yeah, he's missed some games. I don't like the offense that he was in Baltimore. I think there were things that could be done to make the game better for him and easier for him within the offense. They didn't have a ton of talent outside of Mark Andrews at tight end. They keep missing on wide receivers. I think that if you put Lamar Jackson in a better offense, I think you can get much more out of him, and you don't have to rely only on his running. And it seems like that's all Baltimore did. So I don't know. I'm back and forth. Do you give up 2 firsts and a $200 million guaranteed contract over 4 years? So to sign him to a Deshaun deal, except for $30 million isn't guaranteed. Is that I don't know. There's different ways to go about building this roster. Do you go with all young players that you draft? Do you go after Lamar Jackson after the draft so that way you can have 2 and 12 and the rest of your draft capital this year, and then give up your first next year and your first in 2025? You would still have a first round pick in 2024. So maybe you go that route and your whole roster is built off of rookie deals. And so you're playing it backwards. So typically it's the rookie quarterback contract and you're playing on that, but maybe you're able to reverse that. You're paying the quarterback, but the rest of your roster are rookies and not going to be paid for the next 4 to 5 years. It's unique. It's definitely a different approach. Not something I've ever seen, but I can't see why it wouldn't work. I find it interesting that the Ravens were willing to do this, but it makes sense. Let's see what your worth is outside the Baltimore building. Let's see what teams are willing to give you from an offer perspective. Bring it back. If we're willing to meet it, we will. If not, if it's too high, then we're going to let you go. We would prefer for you to be here. We've negotiated with you for the last year and a half to try to sign you to a long-term deal. We weren't able to come to an agreement on that. Now we're in this position. So, yeah, very interesting. Very interesting to see what happens with Lamar Jackson. All right, let's go through some of these comments, and then we'll get into Bobby Slowick. All right. Bryce Young reminds me of Kyler Murray. He also 5'10". Yeah, the only difference Oscar, I agree to an extent from a stature perspective, but he doesn't have the arm of Kyler Murray. Like Kyler Murray actually has a pretty strong arm. Bryce Young is a good attitude. That's fair. I think that's fair. Baker had a much better arm though too. So why sign Jimmy if the plan is to draft Bryce or CJ? Wouldn't those guys play right away? Yeah, that's what I was saying, Fluffy. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. I think Stroud is the safest pick. Bryce Young has too much of a weak arm to be good. Yeah, like my thing with Bryce is it's more about the arm than it is about the size. Like in an offense where let's say something breaks down, like what does he fall back on? Like he was evasive in college, but he had an amazing offensive line at Alabama. Like can he be that evasive in the NFL? I don't know if he can. Those guys are faster, stronger. Like there's schemes that are more difficult to read and understand on the offensive side from a defensive perspective. So like, is it going to take time for him to learn how to process the NFL? Of course it is, right? It's just a different game. But I agree. He's undersized, good at a lot of things, but not great elite at anything. Has much more limited ceiling than other quarterbacks. I would say he's really good at processing. It's probably one of his biggest strengths. I don't know if I'd say he's an elite processor, but I would say he's a great processor. And he's pretty good when things, broke down in Alabama. My only concern is like, what does that look like in the NFL? Can that translate? Is he going to be good when the offensive breaks down in the NFL and you're facing much faster guys, and then the frame comes in. It's like, do you want him taking unnecessary hits? There's a lot that goes into drafting Bryce Young. It's not just as simple as like best processor, best college prospect, did great in college, won at Alabama, played in an NFL offensive scheme. Like all that is great. But like what is going to translate to the next level? And nobody knows the answer. It's that way with a lot of quarterbacks. The difference is he's just small. What could we get for a trade down to the 7-9 range? I did a sim trading with Carolina, picking up pick 39 of first, fourth next year. Well, if I don't think you're going to get 2 1s, not that you did, but like Ryan Poles, the general manager of the Chicago Bears, said that's what he's looking for 1. He's looking for 2 1s and other draft capital. I don't think a team's willing to give up that much to move up to 1. If they're not willing to give up that much to move up to 1, I don't think they're willing to move up to 2 with that price. I think you can get a 1 and a 2 this year, or a 2 this year and a 1 next year, maybe a third. That'd probably be about it. I don't think you can get much more. And you have to wonder, like, if their quarterback, let's say Chicago, somebody does trade up with Chicago and takes Bryce Young, if that was Nick's quarterback. In most situations, good GMs don't reach on the next quarterback, right? It's just not in the cards. They don't get the quarterback. They draft another player. They move on. What you don't want is Nick Caserio to sit back, see that his quarterback was taken, and then say, well, we're just going to take another quarterback. Unless on the board, it's like 1A, 1B, right? Other than that, if that board drops and the next best quarterback you have ranked is at 12, I'm not saying that there is a quarterback that's going to fall to 12, but I'm saying you don't take that quarterback at 2. You take that, you take Will Anderson or, Jalen Carter, whatever. He was great and elite at playing the quarterback in the best college completion there is in SEC competition. Okay. He is not the cancer Baker is. People overreact to the latest news and forgot the 2 years of tape, but you may be right. Yeah, fair. I'm coming around more and more because I think it's going to happen. So there's really nothing we can do. I'd take my chances with EJ Perry over Jimmy G. Yeah. It's funny because when it comes to the RAS score, And Nick Casario's referenced this quite a bit in the past. He talked about it when he was hired. It wasn't his intro press conference, but it was like something on Seth and Sean in 610. And then he mentioned it again this offseason with Jeff Driscoll. And then he just signed EJ Perry, who had a relatively high RAS score too. It's very intriguing to wonder, like, the way that try to understand what Nick looks like and what he values with a quarterback. We don't really know. Well, all we know is what he's done in New England and drafting Davis Mills here. So it's a guess at this point. Okay. John says, I really don't think Bryce's ceiling is as limited as we think. His ceiling to me is Drew Brees. And Brees at his highest was an ultra efficient field general. Yeah. I think that's fair. I think Brees had a better arm. Not much better. Very similar arm, I guess. I don't know. It's just really hard for me to like say Bryce Young is his ceiling is a Hall of Fame quarterback. I just have a hard time doing that. And I could be wrong. And I'm willing to, like, when I say I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It is what it is. Lamar plays a specific type of offense. Can't win playoff games with that. Bobby Sloak definitely don't run that type of offense. He may not. But Bobby Sloak also said that you build the offense around your quarterback strengths. So kind of contradicts what you just said. Jimmy G, QB1, draft 1 in the middle round, look to 2024, which is better. Nick talked about a 2-year window. He did talk about a 2-year window, but I wonder if he was, and I think that's how he looks at it, but I think he was looking at the past 2 years, like explaining how that looked and why we're where we're at now. And I would assume that this next 2-year window, obviously he's looking at it from that same perspective. But if that's the case, that doesn't mean that he's not willing to take a quarterback this year. I'm okay with taking Hendon Hooker in the second round or third round, wherever Hendon Hooker possibly may go. Or the UCLA quarterback who had a pretty nice combine as well. He has 3 names. I forgot it. But yeah, I mean, I'm not – I would prefer to try to take like next year, it's not even just about the quarterback for me. Like, if you feel comfortable taking a quarterback this year, fantastic. I want Marvin Harrison Jr. At the end of the day, I don't really care about anything else. I want Marvin Harrison Jr. at Texan. I think that would just be fantastic. But we'll see. Bobby is looking for a distributor type of quarterback, not a playmaker. Bobby told you that? Because Bobby said he's looking for a guy that he wants to build his offense around the quarterback and its strength. So, I mean, that's what we would assume, right? Based on what we've seen from Bobby, is that's what he's looking for. But at the end of the day, like, we really don't know. Maybe Bobby never had the opportunity to use a quarterback like that. And so that's what he's thinking he needs. And maybe Nick's guiding him in a different way. There's just so many different scenarios that we can go through right now. I don't think it's as easy as saying this is what he wants. I think we can only take a percentage of what we saw in San Francisco. Look, we're not going to have Brandon Ayuk. We're not going to have Deebo Samuel. We're not going to have Christian McCaffrey. So that offense it's going to be different until we get the playmakers. So I can't see them coming out and saying, all right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take the San Francisco offense and we're going to implement it now, because you're missing too many pieces to be able to say this is going to be an efficient offense. Bobby Sloak, I think he could probably be on par with Joe Burrow, but maybe not as explosive as Allen or Mahomes. Yeah, I agree. I think Burrow started using his legs this year and a lot more. I don't know if I want Bryce using his legs as much. I think from a quarterback perspective, like a processor of the game, maybe Burrow. Maybe. I disagree. I don't see the difference between Burrow's arm and his. His arm is not weak. No, his arm is – I wouldn't say weak. His arm is average. Tom Brady has a better arm. But his arm is average. It is what it is. If Bryce gains some lower body strength, his throwing – no, it can't. His velocity is his velocity. It's not going to improve. If you look at his – like, he didn't even add weight to his lower body. He drank a bunch of water to weigh in at 204. Like, Bryce Young is Bryce Young. You guys just have to understand that. And Bryce is going to be Bryce. No quarterback has ever came in and changed and increased their velocity. His throwing motion is his throwing motion. You're not going to go back and fix that, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. But what I'm saying is his velocity is his velocity. It's the way it's always been. Then I don't want Levis at 2. No. His arm strength will get better with age. Remember Tom's arm strength, and it won't get better. Right, but Tom Brady is 6 foot whatever and weight. Like he had weight to put behind it. You guys got to look at everything. One of the things that when I talked to Jordan Palmer when he came on and talked to us about Deshaun Watson was, and if you guys want to go back and listen to that episode, it's up. But it's extremely difficult to add arm strength. And what you do in that time to add the strength is you're gonna there's things you're gonna have to change about your game, right? And there's things you're gonna take away, and like you have to sacrifice certain aspects of your game to be able to and from what I understand, it's Jordan Palmer said it's extremely difficult, and most quarterbacks can't do it. He said he's never seen a quarterback do it. And I trust a guy who's been competing in the Elite 11 and coaching young quarterbacks for a long time. Draft CJ at 2, and let's get this thing going. That's fair. Jimmy G and Richardson, but we trade back from 2. I mean, that's interesting. I think you're going to have to trade up, though. I mean, it depends on how far you go back. And it also depends on what happens at 1, right? That kind of dictates what you do, too. If somebody trades up to 1 and grabs Bryce Young, I think you could potentially move with if Bryce Young is taken and it's not by the Colts at 1, I think the Colts are going to be extremely desperate at 4. And do you make a deal with your division rival to give them their franchise quarterback? What are they willing to give up? I don't know. I think Anthony Richardson could be a target for the Colts. I don't know, man. It's kind of like one of those situations where it's like, if you want your franchise quarterback, do you really want to add additional draft capital and risk him not being there? And so you just take him at 2, or do you trust your board compared to everybody else's board and see what happens? I think ultimately that's where it comes back to for me. I would do it. I'd probably trade with the Raiders, the Falcons, and just take a chance. Try to add an additional 1 next year, which gives you 3 1s in 2024. Atlanta's probably not going to be very the Raiders would probably be my top target. I don't think the Raiders are ever going to be good. I mean, eventually, right, they could be, but I think over the next 3 to 5 years, I don't trust that the Raiders are going to be good enough. I think they're going to fire Josh McDaniels. I think they'll bring in a new GM. They're going to go through the whole process again. So I would trade with the Raiders because I think their pick could be a top 5 pick next year. Atlanta, they were surprising this year, and then towards the end they fell off a cliff. Give him a quarterback. Who knows what that looks like? Arthur Smith is a good coach. We'll see what that happens. I would rather trade with the Raiders than I would the Falcons because I don't think the Raiders are going to be any good. So that gives you potentially a top 5, top 10 pick in 2024. Let's hope Cleveland flames out next year, which I think they will. I don't think there's any reason to think they won't. They are the Browns at the end of the day. Deshaun looked like shit this year. Hopefully that continues. And maybe you have 2 top 10 picks. I mean, you hope the Texans win 7 to 8 games and they're at 12 or 13. But really this year, we're just looking for progression. So, are you competitive in each game? Is there a plan? Does the offense look good? Things of that nature. I don't think there's really a win number that people should probably associate with the Texans in 2023. But the Raiders would be a team I'd target for a trade back. I mean, they might. They probably will. They probably will. I've been saying forever that they're going to draft Bryce Young. Bryce Young just has to be there. Lancer Line Mock 2.0 as Texans taking a middle linebacker in 12. Too high for a middle linebacker, don't you think? Depends. I mean, I think 12 is high. I'd rather go defensive line at that point. If you're trying to stop the run and do other things, I'd probably go Cansey at 12, which some people say is a reach, but most people think he's a second round pick. He's going to go in the first round. I don't know. I don't know if I'd take a middle linebacker at 12. I'd probably trade back at 12. If at 2 I'm taking a quarterback, I'd probably trade back from 12 to 20 or 21 if you really want a middle linebacker. But I wouldn't take him at 12. That's just me. I value the position and it's a need, but I can't see us taking a linebacker at 12. I'd honestly, at that point, like if you're talking about taking a linebacker at 12, I'd rather take Bijan Robinson. And I'm not a first round running back guy. I actually think that you shouldn't ever take a running back in the first round. But I mean, when you think about the dynamic ability of Bijan and Damian Pierce together in a Bobby Slowick Niners offense, I think it'd be interesting. Um, yeah, I don't know. If we could pick up another first for 2024 in a hypothetical, who beats our trade up offer for Williams in May? I hate talking about a draft a year around, but I think they go 1 and 2 now. So there's a lot that goes into this, Brands, right? Excuse me. Everybody says like, oh, if you don't draft a quarterback this year, dude, you're not going to be able to grab one. You're going to be in quarterback purgatory, dude. I don't really understand the logic of that because, like, the Colts never decided to trade up and grab their quarterback. They decided to go with the vet every year. Washington Commanders never traded up when they had the capital and they had the ability to move up and grab their guy. They never did it. Also depends on who's at 1 or 2, right? Like we've seen in years past, like what if something happens with the Chiefs? And I know. Even if Mahomes gets hurt, they're going to win 6 or 7 games. But you just never know in the NFL. You never know who's going to be at 1. You never know who's going to be at 2. What if Deshaun flames out and the Browns flame out and they end up being the worst team in the league? They're already having to gut their roster to an extent this offseason. Like they're talking about trading Nick Chubb. Their center's going to be gone. Deshaun Watson was shit last year. Like if that whole thing implodes internally or Deshaun Watson gets hurt week 1, what if the Browns have the first pick overall? Like there's just so many scenarios. So it all depends. Like whoever picks at 1 could have a franchise quarterback that just got hurt in the offseason. Whoever picks at 2 could just be a total meltdown by the Browns. Like there's so many different aspects to this. And obviously it's extremely hard to project a year out where a team will be. I think if a team's at 1 and needs a quarterback, you're not sure. You don't have enough ammunition to be able to say, hey, we'll take Caleb Williams. They're going to want Caleb Williams. Like even if you give up 3 ones, it's that year. If let's say you have 3 ones and you give it up and then you give up an additional first, like why would they take that? Caleb Williams doesn't come around very often. The Trevor Lawrences, the Andrew Lucks, like those guys don't come around. So you're going to have to take them. I think the Texans would have to be at 1 to be able to draft Caleb Williams. May, on the other hand, I don't know. We have another year of college to go. There's some other good quarterbacks in college football this year. I think it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I think 2 is possible for May. But I don't think 1 for Williams is possible. I just can't see it. But I mean, maybe. Like I said, maybe the Texans pick there. Who knows? Maybe you trade with the Raiders and the Raiders flame out. That's probably a bet I would take right now, no matter who they grab at quarterback. That offense sucks. It's archaic. Josh McDaniels is not a good head coach. He's not a leader of men. He's a snob. Most players don't respect him. I mean, it's possible. Who knows? Realistically, honestly, Alex, I'll get to that tonight. Me and Aaron Wilson's coming on the night at 9 p.m. We're going to talk NFL free agency. So I'll definitely get to that stuff tonight. So you guys tune in 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, taking the fam to go see Scream, and then I'll be back to stream at 9. But yeah. All right, guys. Well, Bobby Slowick and Matt Burke press conference. I didn't get a chance to finish Matt Burke's press conference. Bobby Slowick, the way this guy speaks, he's a future head coach. He just gets it. I love the way he describes the offense. I love how he talked about Kyle Shanahan and Mike Shanahan. I think there were a lot of good nuggets in there. I think he's going to be a very special play caller. And I was one of those guys that wanted an offensive-minded head coach because I wanted to be able to do more on offense and be able to evolve the offense and just be, one of those top-tier offensive teams. While Bobby Slowick probably won't be here for more than 2 to 3 years, I think Bobby Slowick is the answer on offense, and it's going to be really interesting what he can do on offense. He's just a bright mind. When you hear him talk, it's just different than what you hear from other coordinators. He's a football nerd. and nerd to the fullest degree. And he's been around the game for a long time. I'm excited about Bobby Slowick. Matt Burke, I don't know yet. Like I just don't know. I think if D'Amico takes him under his like puts his arm around him and says, look, this is how we're going to do things. I need you to learn from me. We're going to lead the defense. This is what we're looking for from a schematic perspective. Here's how we're leading our men. Like, this is what we want to do when we're calling plays. I think it could work. I don't think you could say, Matt Burke, go ahead and go and just call the defense. I don't think that'll work. But I don't think that's the plan. I think, and D'Amico mentioned it at the combine that, he doesn't know who's going to call plays. So, all right, workday is getting started. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you guys like and comment and subscribe and turn notifications on and all that good stuff. Appreciate you guys banging it out with me this morning. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week. I'll see you tonight at 9. Also, next week, Lance Zierlein. Week after that, Dane Brugler. I have a couple other things that I'm working on as well. So as we prepare for the draft, it'll be extremely interesting. You'll have a bunch of guests on here to be able to talk and give you guys some information on kind of where things are at. But with that being said, I'm Young Ari Gold signing off for Texans Unfiltered. I'm going to catch you guys tonight at 9.